Yo, people and patrons of the night. I hope all of you are feeling festive, especially because when this video drops, it is Halloween. That's right. We've been anticipating this big day. The day has come. And what better way to spend it than talk about a brand new Halloween anthology movie that came out, a found footage series that many of you probably know about, which is VHS. And there's only one person that I think is fitting to talk about it with, and that is a fellow Goosejunkies co-host. Now, this is Ultimate Goosebumps man, Micah, one of my good friends. We've made many videos together. We've done collabs on his channel. Micah, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to talk about this movie. This is my first real big VHS movie that I've seen all the way through, so it's kind of fun to talk about something different than Goosebumps and other kids horror stuff and branch out into more adult horror. So
Yeah, listen, I mean, that's also one thing that I always kind of forget about is like I always think when these VHS movies comes out, everyone's seen all the previous ones, but it could always be somebody's brand new, kind of experience and gateway. So it will be interesting because I have seen all the VHS movies before this point. This is your first introduction. I hope it leads you to watching the rest of them, so maybe we can have more stuff to talk about in the future. But overall, I guess to start off with, since this was your first VHS movie experience. Before we get into each individual segment, what was your overall thoughts about the movie?
overall, I enjoyed it. I have seen a few of like the individual segments from other VHS movies. I've just never really sat down and watched them all the way through.
Mm.
But for being the first one to sit down with, I thought it was a fun time. There was a mix of some good and some bad. I don't think it was like the best from what I've heard. A lot of people don't really care for it, which is fine. But for being my first one and not having much experience with the franchise as a whole, I enjoyed it for what it was.
Yeah, this one I think has been a little more divisive from what I've seen from reviews. I think some people really love this one, which, good on them. And then I think some people have just sort of been like in the middle with it. For me, I guess personally, I wasn't too impressed. There's definitely parts that I like about it, and I definitely think that this movie had some of the best, I guess, aesthetics, some of the best visual kind of look and themes to it, which I was expecting. But I think just in terms of the overall quality, some of the segments just didn't hit the mark for me. But there was still some good stuff. And I think that part of it also comes down to the fact that, Shudder has been known in the past to kind of like cut budgets and reduce the budget the more and more a series becomes popular. And I think you can definitely tell that as the movies go on, they sort of have to micromanage with the budget. So they might have some great ideas, but then the budget kind of holds it back, unfortunately. Shutter, if you're out there listening, stop doing that. Okay, don't be too greedy. Give more money because you got some talented people out there with some good story ideas, so they need the backing. So I think for this review, what we'll do is let's go through each of the anthology segments, and then we'll save the wraparound segment for the end because some movies have had some kind of like throwaway wraparound segments. Not this one. This one has a whole story that unfolds pretty much throughout the movie. So the first segment is actually personally my favorite segment, and that is the one called Coochie Coo.
Coochie, coochie, coo.
When I heard the title, I was like, what? Because I read the Wikipedia before the movie came out, and I was like, okay, that looks kind of strange. But I guess overall, as my thoughts, just to get into a little bit about the segment, this one is about these two girls who are at kind of like the last senior years of high school. One of them is on their way to, I think, go to Yale or some prestigious university. The other one is kind of a drifter, doesn't really know what's going to go on with their future. But they want to have one big bang last Halloween and celebrate it to the max. So you see them kind of pre-gaming, they're smoking, they're getting ready, they're getting excited. And then you have these three little kids who end up basically approaching their car, knocking on the window, and they leave this ominous threat, kind of foreshadowing this urban legend about some being called the mommy, which takes away kids that are too old for Halloween to be trick or treating or outside and basically kind of kidnaps them. And that's the reason for them going missing. And there's apparently been stories about this before. There was a girl dressed as a cheerleader who went missing, who was an older high school girl. So they've heard about this, but they don't take it too much to heart. The kids seem like little brats, so they scare them away. And as they start going through the trick or treating night, they start visiting different houses. you see that they are not exactly your most stand-up civilian trick-or-treaters. They're kind of stealing candy and causing pranks and just going pure wild. So, if this was Trick or Treat 2007, Sam would have clapped him a long time ago. But it's not the case. Here they end up basically terrorizing the night, but having a good time. And then they get to this house. And this house is kind of ominous. It looks almost like haunted. It looks kind of isolated. And you see that trick or treaters are just walking past it. They're kind of like avoiding this house. They don't want to go to it. And when the girls go there, the lights in the house and the power starts flickering ominously. And eventually they kind of decide, all right, no one's answering the door after we're knocking. Let's just go. It might just be like some kind of, prank or whatever. And then eventually the door does open when they turn around and watch. And in the dark corridor, they see this hand with the basket just sticking out. Just mighty ominous, mighty creepy, mighty get the fuck out. These are like red flags going off. I got the red on, red flags, people. But they, don't listen. Particularly the drifter kind of girl does not listen because she decides to enter the house and then kind of peer pressure her friend to come in with her. And when they do, they get trapped in there. The house starts shifting, and the entity called the mommy might start revealing itself in all of its horrific fashion. Let's just put it at that. So, overall, I had this segment as a decent when I first watched it, maybe like a 7 out of 10. I might boost it up to a pretty good. I think this is a pretty good segment. Probably give it somewhere closer to like a 7.5. This segment has a lot of creepy moments, and I know that you're going to highlight them as well, because you and I kind of had similar thoughts. Where the scenes of the witch, the mommy, I don't know about you, but there's that scene of like the Resident Evil 7 video game where I think like your girlfriend in the game basically like jumps up on you, and her pale, distorted, kind of weird look really doesn't match the witch here, except the witch has, three pairs of breasts and this horrific grin and this pale skin and a lot of creepy scenes. The scene with the arm sticking out the corridor was super creepy. I remember I saw that and I was like, oh hell no. Like it was that immediate like, back up. I don't want to go any further with the segment. But that's not how a movie works. You got to strap in for the ride. And there is a scene that I know you've highlighted before, and it's a scene that I love about the segment, where it's the witch peering behind a corner, and when they flip the camera, it's like night vision, so you just see her glowing white eyes, and when she's moving, her body's like cracking and snapping as she's like backing away, and it's just this horrific woman around the corner just grinning at them and looking at them. It is nightmare fuel. It looks like something you would see on like a scary YouTube comp back in the day. It is horrific stuff. And when you get all the scenes with the mommy, she's very terrifying, very scary. The idea of getting trapped in a house and the architecture moving around so you can't escape, that's very ominous. There is girls being waterboarded by milk, breast milk, which is horrific and messed up. Although with these creepy scenes and stuff, you know, I do like the segment for how creepy it is, but I do think that it goes a little bit too comedic on some kind of things, or at least a little too absurd or goofy. The depictions of the type of like human adult babies that mommy makes, um, they look kind of funny. I was expecting a more demonic baby look, hellspawn baby look. They had something like that in the first segment of VHS Beyond, the previous movie. They had more monstrous babies, which is funny that the first segment of this movie and first segment of that movie are both baby related. Coincidental, or maybe not, who knows. And the whole lullaby kind of thing gets a little bit cheesy, a little bit tacky. I was like, okay, I get it. But at the same time, it's hard to take seriously at some points. And the main characters, while they are serviceable, I do think they are a little kind of annoying at some points. They often result to a lot of screaming and crying, and there were some points in the segment where I'm like, okay, can you guys like fucking make the right decision or do something? Like, there's two specific scenes. One scene is when they first see this adult baby in a corridor, and they hear the witch kind of figure on the other side. and they decide to walk past the adult baby. Like I don't know about you, but I think I would stay far the fuck away from any weird being that I see in this haunted house attraction, just because you already know things are going bad. Second, when the witch abducts one of them later in the story, the other one just kind of sits there and watches the whole thing, and I'm like, can you fucking try to save your friend, or can you try to run away or do something? Just the idea of you sitting there like this, watching your friend get clapped in front of you. I mean, it might be realistic, deer in the headlights kind of thing, but it just felt a little ridiculous to me. So that's kind of my general thoughts. But Micah, give me your thoughts. I hope I didn't steal too much of the shine. You could cover some of the points I brought up too.
Yeah, I would say this is probably my second favorite of this segment of the movie. I think again, I think it was easily the creepiest, without a doubt. Like there were so many scenes that were like genuinely like sent a chill down my spine when I watched it. Again, like the scene of the arm sticking out of the door, and then of course the scene of her peeking around the corner. It's just so like unsettling, and it makes you like after watching it, it makes you like like constantly like check around corners and stuff in your own home because it makes you on edge. On like honestly, when you're in a dark home, your own dark home, despite knowing nobody is there, it just has that little like itch in the back of your mind of like, what if somebody was actually there? And like I think that makes it really effective in terms of those moments. I think that just the idea of being like pretty much locked inside this house that has no escape, the door vanishing and like all that stuff, and then being basically forced to regress into a baby by this like terrifying witch woman is such an unsettling concept. And while it does look a little goofy with the adult baby idea, like I do think it's still a very unsettling kind of thing, especially when they come across, the girl who went missing in there. I think that visual of like just seeing like the really wide eyes, the popped out cheeks, and even like having their fingers like deformed into little like baby hands is just again, it's very unnerving and it makes you wonder like what does like this mommy demon do to these people to make them to turn them into this. And also I think the ending, I think it's a very like effective kind of good downer ending. VHS segments when I've seen always going to have a downer ending. It never usually turns out well for the protagonists, but I think this one especially is just kind of eerie, and the fact that the main character, the one who was going to Yale, she basically accepts her fate. It's not like most of the time where they're trying to constantly escape. She like it basically ends on her realizing there's no escape, and she just walks over and just accepts what's going to happen to her. And I think that just ends it on such an eerie note because it adds to that hopeless feeling of the short. And I think I also really like the little detail they have in playing into that found footage idea of them rewinding the tape at one point to check to see where the door was. I thought that was a really clever little addition into there to really make it feel like a found tape. And then there's a lot of really interesting stuff in here. Again, it's a very darkly lit setting. And I like how the way it's shot as well, because it really does feel like you're walking through like a walk-through haunted house attraction, which I kind of like that aspect of it. That kind of feels like one of those Halloween haunts you would go to. And it was just a lot of, again, it was the creepiest segment. There's a lot of good effective scares. And overall, I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty solid. So that's based my thoughts pretty much.
Yeah, that rewinding thing, I don't think it's been done in any other movie. So that was pretty novel because, like, you would figure that they might, I didn't even think about that. Like, when they rewinded, I was like, oh, yeah, this is on camera. They could just go back and double check. So that was pretty novel. And I think just the fact, like, I think you might agree to this too. Like, just the idea of, like, urban legend just being the basis of stuff. We love urban legends over here, people. Me and Mike have talked about it before. Just having an urban legend setup just makes it creepy and almost makes you want to see more. But I think the segment did a good job, especially when you see her like, you find out that she like hung herself after she was like pregnant and stuff. It's quite morbid, quite messed up. So they did an effective job with that. So yeah, that's pretty much the first segment. I guess going on to the next one would be I think the segment is called. Listen, God forgive me. It's Oot Supra Sick Info.
Vais a flipar.
Is that
I think
correct?
so. I think that sounds right.
All right. Well, I'll let you lead this one. You can take over, talk a little bit about the story, and then get into your thoughts, and then I'll take after.
Okay, so basically a little bit of a background of the story. This one's probably like the least fresh in my mind, so I may not be every detail, but the basic idea is that this group of kids on Halloween night go into this old abandoned, like, I don't know if it was a bunker. I can't remember exactly what it was, but they go into this like bunker location, and eventually they like come across this like little Latin reading that says "Ut supra sinc infera," which I think is Latin for "as above, so below." And after someone reads this, one particular guy ends up, there's a mysterious phone that ends up just appearing and starts ringing out of nowhere, despite not being connected to anything. And when this guy answers the phone, suddenly he starts convulsing and like pretty much becomes possessed. And all these, eventually, it kind of cuts to away, but it shows that these kids who are all there ended up dead with their eyes gouged out. And it's a really unsettling concept, but this one guy who was the one who was pretty much possessed in the past ended up surviving. And then this like news crew, I think it was like a news crew, ended up coming down to interview this guy and ask him, what happened with these disappearances. And he ends up leading them back down into this bunker, and history repeats itself. And I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff in here. There's some really gnarly visuals, like the scene of him basically when he's possessed the second time and he starts like vomiting out eyeballs, which was really nasty. And then, of course, the ending where you actually watch him, gouge out a woman's eye is just so, it's really well done. Like however they pulled off those effects, like they did a really good job with that. It was really like unsettling, really creepy. And I think, in my opinion, this is my least favorite segment. I think that it's just kind of, it was the most boring in my opinion. There was some good, like there was a good ending to it. I really like that part, but overall, I think it was just not my favorite. From what I've seen, I'm not a big fan of most of the foreign segments. Nothing against any of those people, but I don't know. I just found those to be the least interesting in my opinion. But it was still well done. There were still some effective scares. I like the setting a lot. I think the set they used for this bunker location was really cool. I like a lot of the effects, like seeing people rising up onto the ceiling pretty much. I think that was really creepy. But overall, I would say it's my least favorite, like, of the main segments. But it was still solid in my opinion. So I probably give it like probably a 6 out of 10.
Yeah, that's fair. I think in terms of like the ranking, I gotta think about it. This one might be like my third favorite. Like if we're talking about like ranking, it's probably my third. In terms of the foreign segments, I don't know if you've seen Safe Haven from the second movie. That is a lot of people's favorite segment, including mine. So I think you should check that one out because that one is batshit crazy. Well, we're not gonna get into that. That's a whole other discussion. But yeah, this one, I the whole idea of it, just being like Halloween kids going into this haunted house, this manor where this woman was an occultist and stuff. It's a pretty decent setup to an idea of a story. I have to say that I do like the fact that there's like two different kind of perspectives that line up with each other. You have the found footage kind of past involving actual Halloween night, and then you have this police crew who's taking in for this investigation. And the two lining up together, I think, works out well for a mystery. Um, I do like, as you mentioned, the disturbing visuals. It is very creepy. If you are scared of demonic possession, I can understand why this one might get to you a lot more. Because, vomiting up eyeballs, as you brought up, is disgusting. The whole inverse flip scene with the camera, with getting to the ceiling, that was really cool. I wasn't expecting that. And it's a really cool visual, especially with as above, so below. Which keeps reminding me of the other found footage movie with the same name. But I do have to say, the one thing about this segment is that I thought the idea was still pretty basic. Like, if you compare this to any other story idea in the actual movie, it's probably the most basic. And even though I did like what we got in terms of visuals, I do feel that the fact we didn't get any more backstory on the occultist lady, what exactly was happening in this house, what was she doing? You never get any specifics behind the backstory with the villain in this case. Because the actual villain that we see is just a medium, just somebody who's been possessed against their will. So I feel like if we would have got more backstory on that, maybe you would have added some more creative flair. Probably could have made it more memorable. But yeah, I'd probably give this one like a 7 out of 10 decent. Compared to the other one, I don't think it's as good. So that's the second segment. The third one is probably one of the most wild segments out there. It's also the one I was looking forward to the most. This one is called Fun Size.
Help me!
Fun size!
Fun Size is essentially about these group of, I think, senior high school kids, not sure how old they are, but essentially they're out on Halloween night. They're too old to be trick or treating, but they're going out there having some fun. You have a girl and her boyfriend. Boyfriend's dressed up as a pirate. She's like a superhero. And then you have their two other friends who recently got engaged. You will not forget that detail because it'll keep getting brought up throughout the whole fucking segment. But they recently got engaged and they're dressed up as like found footage crew for a horror movie. So it's like breaking the fourth wall. It's like meta inside the meta because it's a found footage movie. Um, and as they're knocking and going to each door and getting candies, just having a fun time. And then the girl tells like the other girl like, "Hey, are you gonna tell the guy that you don't actually want to marry him? You don't actually want to be engaged to him?" Because you find out that she doesn't actually like the guy. You know, she just did it to be nice to him, which is a little upsetting for that guy at least. And when they get to this house, they see that there's this massive candy bowl, like this huge candy bowl, but all the candy's strange. It's got like alien foreign language kind of names to it. It's got strange designs. And when the pirate guy ends up opening one, he finds a chocolate dick. And of course, starts doing all the gestures and innuendos and eats it. And it says, "Take one piece for this bowl." And of course, I've said this before, bro. This is the easiest trick in the goddamn book. It's like taking, a dollar bill and putting a wire on it, It's like anytime you say take one piece, they're always going to fail and fold. And when he ends up taking more than one piece, this orange hand comes out and grabs him and starts pulling him and sucking him down into the bowl. And they can see below that there's no hole, no cutout. It's this almost pocket dimension inside the bowl. They all end up getting, well, two of them end up getting dragged in. The other two girls try to run away and call the cops. And when they turn around, they see a comically flying candy bowl just consume them. And they end up in this warehouse, almost like the back rooms. And you have this strange Lovecraftian, we don't really know what it is, but this Halloween being named Fun Size, who's got this casino suit on. He's got this giant orange head with these googly eyes and stuff. And he goes, "Fun Size." And they start running away from him. And he's able to teleport. He's able to manipulate them, teleport them around and stuff. So he's almost like a god of this pocket dimension. And the pirate guy ends up getting on a conveyor belt where he's chopped to pieces and turned into candy. Which, if you can't put the pieces together, no pun intended, those were body parts that was in the giant candy bowl turned into candy. So yeah, they just entered into a saw trap from hell, all themed around candy and stuff. And Fun Size has a little henchman guy that's got like a brownie head that ends up tripping people and helping them out. And it's their job to try to escape. Try to escape. This segment, I won't lie. I'm gonna give it like a 4.5 out of 10. Pretty bad. Now, the reason why I didn't like this segment is because I was the most hyped for this segment. Because I saw in the trailer the design of Fun Size and his henchmen, and I was like, "Oh, this looks fun." And I thought it was gonna be like a Five Nights at Freddy type of thing. Maybe we might get into that more, kind of goofy, but more like fun horror kind of route. And then you end up getting into this like I know they have a low budget, but you end up in this basic ass mundane warehouse, which I don't think fits at all with the bright, shiny colors of Fun Size and his henchmen. The dialogue in this segment is fucking horrible. I'm sorry, y'all. The dialogue is atrocious. The dude who has a fiance keeps calling her by fiance the whole segment. And when they're in a conveyor belt about to get killed, he fucking proposes to her. Like he straight up says, "Will you marry me?" And she goes, "No, I'm not marrying you." And then he proceeds to get slimed. So it's like, okay, what are we doing here? This is a life or death situation. I don't think this is the time for it. The girl in the superhero costume, she sees her boyfriend get chopped up, and her immediate response is, "Fuck it, I'm getting on the conveyor belt. I'm done." What? That's your first response is to just be like, "You know what? I'm committing suicide." Okay, that's not exactly helpful in the situation, I don't think. Um, the horror there's a lot of penis jokes in this one. I don't know what their fetish over penises, chocolate penises was. There's too many penis jokes. I'm seeing a dude's balls on screen for like a solid 3 seconds. By the way, the website that I was watching this on, it buffered right when it showed his balls on the screen, which is that's just God taking his the piss out of me. Like, of course it had to pause at that moment out of all places. It paused on the dick and it paused on the balls. I wish I was kidding, but the site buffered at those two exact panels. That's just Fun Size decided to play a prank on me. So the dialogue's atrocious. The horror involving chopping up people and making into candy is scary. I'm not gonna lie to you. I like the concept of that. I like all the foreign candy idea and the giant candy bowl. It's just the execution looks a little hokey, especially when like one of the girls gets like a tube up her ass and filled with like Skittles and it just pops out her head. I was like, what the fuck even is this at this point? And the ending. The ending with the candy bowl just looked super hokey to me. So I feel like this one had the most potential out of all the segments to be like a brand new mascot segment, especially because Fun Size is a pretty iconic villain with how he's portrayed. But just that execution ended up being too goofy for me, and God, that dialogue, man. I'm sorry. The character writing is just it's bad. It's like almost porno level acting at certain points. So, I had to give it a pretty bad. But what did you think about Fun Size?
I would say it's definitely like this like objectively it is the worst segment of the movie, but I don't care. I had fun with it in a so bad it's good kind of way. There's a lot. Again, I agree with you. The dialogue is absolutely abysmal in this. Like it really does just like I don't know. It almost feels like they were trying to be like the most stereotypical like douchey like young adult party people. And it's just really bad. The acting is not very good. I think that again the concept is really fun. I like Fun Size as the kind of mascot, like villain kind of character, and I like the whole idea of being punished for taking more than one piece of candy. Because let's be honest here, when we were kids, we never took just one piece. Like me and my friends, I remember we would always end up taking like a handful or something like that. Just it's just what you did as kids. So I do like the idea of, actually being punished for breaking that rule, almost if it's like a sacred rule of trick-or-treating. And, I think there are some good goofy kills in here, but they're fun for what they are. I think seeing the guy going through the conveyor belt and getting chopped up was pretty brutal. And, I think that, again, it is very silly, but there was just a lot of fun elements to it that I enjoyed overall. I'll give it only like a 6.5 out of 10 for me. Like, again, it's still not good, but I enjoyed it for what it was, despite its many glaring flaws.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, it's one of those ones where it's almost like if you turn off your brain, you'll probably have like a fun time. But it's just one of those ones where like I wanted to really like it, but then the more and more I just kept seeing it, I'm like, if they had a better budget, if they had better acting, better writing, it'd be such a better segment. And then I'm like, you know what? It's kind of bad. But I'm glad you liked it. I can understand why people, turning off their brains can have a fun time. The next one is I'm gonna say this. I think this is the most controversial segment in the entire movie. And actually, I'll say this up front. This might be the most controversial segment in the entire franchise. Like, I don't think there's any other segment that's matched the level of controversy in this one. That I know people who love this segment who really like it got under their skin and creeped them out, and then people who flat out hated it. So I've not heard your take on this one. So what was your idea? A little bit about the story, and then just your thoughts on Kids Print.
Yeah. Well, if your mom lets you, what would you dress up as?
A butterfly.
Butter. That's great. I love that. A butterfly.
All right. So the story of Kid Print basically centers around this guy who's working in like a Radio Shack kind of technology store. I think it was in the 90s. And they're basically doing these things, this like service where they're filming these kids like against like a height thing that you would see in like a prison or something like that. And basically recording them, telling them, what they're going as for Halloween, some of their favorite things, their names, their heights, all that stuff. And basically they're doing this as a way to monitor, as a way for police to see this in case a kid gets kidnapped, because there's been a series of kidnappings going on around the neighborhood and everyone's kind of on edge and petrified about this idea. And so they're basically making all these, and you meet a bunch of the people working there. You see some of the other like teen employees, And then you meet a guy named Bruce who works in this. He's kind of like the security guy. And there's something off about him. He seems like a nice, chipper dude who just is dedicated to helping out the company. And basically, there's a whole thing where these kids have to go to this, I think it was like a park or a police station or something like that, to go trick-or-treating. And it was kind of just like, go to them, get a bit of candy, and then you go back home immediately, just to make sure that, all the kids are safe and nothing goes wrong. But they notice that a kid has gone missing. And the big reveal is, and I'll throw a little spoiler alert here because this is how I gotta talk. But it was revealed that Bruce, the guy working in the security office, is the one who is kidnapping these kids and is basically filming himself torturing, mutilating, and murdering them. And it is genuinely disturbing to watch. Like, it feels like you're watching a snuff film at times. Like, it is really brutal, really hard to watch. And basically near the end, the main character ends up going to this hardware store to try and save these kids and try and put a stop to everything going on. And Bruce ends up framing him as the one who's doing this. And then his latest two victims end up coming and killing him and thinking they're about to escape, and they end up getting killed off screen. And then you see basically this news report that's saying, like, the kidnapper / killer was found dead inside the Kaplan store. And then you see this shot of Bruce just nonchalantly, just like, I view his usual chipper, helpful self, just saying, I will forever be dedicated to helping out the kid print services. And it is such an unsettling ending because he won. And I think that's what makes this scene, or this short, so effective for me. I would say it's my third favorite overall. It's not really one I ever intend to rewatch just because of how visceral and disturbing it is. But, I do appreciate that they weren't afraid of going there. Because I feel like a lot of filmmakers usually will censor this stuff. And obviously, it's horrible nonetheless. But at least I respect the idea, and I respect the fact that this filmmaker had the balls to go there. And I think, again, very unsettling. I think they definitely go a little too heavy into the torture scenes. I think that, again, as I mentioned, it feels like a snuff film at times. And it's just, again, very unpleasant to watch. I think that Bruce is a very unnerving villain. Obviously, this one is a very realistic thing. And that's what I also think makes it so scary and so effective to me, is that this is not a supernatural horror. This is something that could just very much happen in the real world. And in my opinion, real life horror is far scarier than any supernatural horror could ever be, because it's something, that could actually happen to people. And it's so sad to think about this happening. But again, I think that it was effective for what it was trying to do. Not one I'd ever intend to rewatch, but for what it was, I do think that they did a good job with, I guess, how they put it together.
Yeah. This one is my bottom segment. It's my most hated one. Now, when I say this is not by any means a bad made segment, because I think that this segment, one of the biggest reasons why it pissed me off is because the acting from everybody's great. Like, this is probably one of the best acted segments out of any of the segments. It's shot extremely well. The pacing's very good. It's very intense. But the reason I hate this segment is because I kind of have my own personal rule. That if you're going to go down the whole, torturing kids, killing kids, usually I like supernatural, some form, some type of threat. Now, that's, supernatural doesn't mean ghost. It could be alien, monster, could be even an entity, could be anything. I like the idea of that disassociation, that this is an entity which is, far from human. There's something occult about it, and it makes me able to process and I enjoy the kids getting tortured and killed, because it makes it more fun that way. And I've read extreme horror stories. I've read entire collections of, extreme horror short stories. Usually when there is a villain that's doing horrible things like this, if it is realistic, because some are realistic, usually they tend to lose. And this one kind of broke both rules. It gives you a human weirdo, just flat out. Bruce has played it to just be a weirdo serial killer, Jeffrey Dahmer, whatever you want to name it, type, John Wayne Gacy, more so in this case, type, where, he's just hyper realistic and it's literally snuff. I mean, I wanted to say it wasn't a snuff film, but there is literally multiple screens showing you kids getting their skins ripped apart and their faces torn off. He's taking their faces and wearing them. It's all types of just horrific stuff. And the amount, and again, this is an extremely well acted segment, the amount of just little girls screaming their heads off, just begging for pain. It's like, this is not enjoyable. And I like horror. I like when it goes dark and brutal, but it needs to be enjoyable. I don't want to feel like the fucking FBI is about to break through my door and fucking take me in, full SWAT team after watching a segment. And he won. And he won, and he didn't just win as in like he got away and he was never caught again like the Zodiac Killer. No, he's continuing the operation. And when I saw this segment first, my initial thoughts was it was going to be a cloning segment. I thought that the guys at this shop were cloning the kids and doing something like that. And I was like, oh, this is really fun. This is actually well shot. And then the big plot twist came, and I was like, oh my Lord. So too realistic for me, too gruesome for me, and just guy wins at the end. So it's almost like I feel disgusting after watching it. So, but I know plenty of people who thought it was disturbing for the reasons you mentioned. They like extreme horror, they liked it. So this is going to be one of the most controversial ones. I hated it. Micah liked it. I know some of you guys love it. So go watch it. At least once. At least once. I don't think anybody wants to watch it more than once, unless. And if you do, don't admit it. Please, for the love of God, do not publicly admit that you do. Because, but at least watch it once, see how you feel about it, and let us know. Because I can't say it's a bad segment. It's just far from my taste. But it's a well-made segment, all things considered. And now the last one. And I think this one is my second favorite. I have a sneaking suspicion where this one lands for you. Because arguably, in my opinion, this is one of the best stories. And that is Home Haunt. Now, Home Haunt feels more like a Creepshow story or a Tales from the Dark Side episode than it does actual VHS segment, which is a good thing. This one is about a father and son dynamic. They have this home haunt, as the name says. They have like a haunted house attraction at their house. They set up decorations and attractions. Come to our house, get scared, and leave. Now, in reality, the house haunt is not scary. It's more so just meant to be fun, family bonding. And when the kid is young, you see a lot of nice father and son moments where he's helping him get his costume together. They're like Victor Frankenstein and the monster. Very cool. And then when the son gets older, he turns into Jonah Hill from Superbad or whatever. He's just like, fuck you, Dad, you ruined my life. All that type of angsty teenager stuff. He's become such a popular thing in the neighborhood that they draw pictures of him and they make fun of him, and he can't get a girlfriend, he can't get laid. Just all Jonah Hill movie qualities, which is funny. It's fun. And what happens is that eventually the dad's like, hey, I want to at least host one more house haunt. And the son reluctantly agrees. He's kind of, doesn't want to do it, but he's like, all right, Dad, fine, let's just do it, one last time. And when they go to the Halloween shop, this kind of like souvenir shop where they can go and buy stuff, the dad breaks one of the rules. He goes to the employee only section. And as he's digging through, he finds this vinyl record, which is like the Song of the Damned. It's got Creepshow like artwork on it, like old EC comic artwork. It's a cool design for a vinyl record. If they have merch in the future, release that as like a merchandise item. And he ends up bringing it home. And when they start playing this on the night of Halloween during the home haunt, all their decorations come to life. On some Goosebumps 2 Haunted Halloween type of shit, they all come to life, except a lot more gruesome because people actually get chopped up and killed here. And they then are stuck as this vinyl record is playing, bringing all their decorations to life, and they have to solve it. I'll put quotes on the word solve because it just turns into pure mayhem, okay? This one's really fun. This is my second favorite segment in the movie behind Coochie Coochie Coo. Honestly, this might become even probably my favorite segment. Just depends over time. One of the biggest things about it is I thought that the budget, in some places looked kind of iffy. And particularly, it's just the sequence with the ghosts. those paper sheet ghosts killing people looked ridiculous. Like it just looked like they were eating people. It looked goofy, but it's fun. And reflecting on it, the whole scene with the ghouls is pretty damn good, pretty damn intense and scary. The executioner scene I liked. I immediately thought of Night in Terror Tower from Goosebumps. I was like, that's fun. And shout out to the mom. The mom is the MVP. She was whooping ass and saving the day. Shout out to mama. The witch segment is horrific and reminds me of a Tales from the Dark Side episode, the first episode known as Trick or Treat, with the way the witch looks. And the ending segment with the sign coming to life, you mentioned it before, reminds of Goosebumps. Horrorland, One Day at Horrorland. Really fun. Overall, I just gotta say, short and sweet. This is a very fun segment. It feels like an easy comic story. Feels like a creep show segment, and I think this is one of the best ways to end off, especially after you just showed me that fucking shit from Kids Print. You know what I mean? Kid Print to this is like a breath of fresh air. I was like, thank the Lords, thank Sam Hain, thank you Sawin for giving us this because it was fun. It left off on a good note, and yes, it is dark, it is scary technically because there's a lot of gore and violence. But it makes you feel good. Kind of reminds you of like the Evil Dead movies where, yeah, they're dark, they're crazy, but you feel good after watching them. So what's your thoughts on it? I have a sneaking suspicion I know where you stand on this one.
Yeah, this is my favorite segment of the movie, 100%. It is just so fun. It's the one that embraces the Halloween atmosphere the most. I think that I love going to haunted houses. A lot of good memories of me and some of my buddies back in high school going to a local haunted house and just having a good time. So I always love that. I love the idea of just this like cursed record that just brings a haunted house to life. I think that's such a fun concept for a Halloween short, especially in like a found footage style. Also, shout out to Rick Baker getting a cameo in this. I love that they got Rick Baker in here as like this curmudgeon-y neighbor who just hates this whole house because the effects look cheap and fake. Which, if you know Rick Baker, he's one of the most award-winning effects guys out there. And, so that's a really fun little meta joke with him. I really love that they got him involved in this. And yeah, it is just a whole lot of fun. I think this is another segment where, spoiler, kids do die in it, but in very brutal ways. There's one kid who's dressed in a bumblebee costume who's getting like ripped apart by zombies. Or like, this little girl who ends up like kind of stupidly wandering into this witch hut, almost like, I don't know if she was like in a trance or something, but I mean, she ends up getting boiled alive in a pot. And it's just like, the scene with the witches like flying out of the house and like going on this rampage around the neighborhood is really fun. And like, I love the way like the camera is almost suspended at the edge of the broomstick. I think that's a really clever kind of way to have that found footage continue. And I love that final shot of the house coming to life. I almost kind of wonder if it was intentionally meant to be an homage to One Day at Horrorland or if it was just kind of a complete accident. But as a Goosebumps fan, you catch that kind of stuff. So that was really fun. I think aside from the sheet ghosts, all the practical effects look really good. I think all of the makeup effects are really well done and creepy. The mom kicks ass in this one. She is like, I don't know, she might be one of my favorite characters in this movie, if not my favorite, just because she's the definition of like a don't fuck with my kids kind of scenario. And I just love that. And yeah, I think overall I love the atmosphere. I love the, idea between how the dad and the son act and how it kind of brings them closer together at the end of it. And I just I don't know. I just think this segment was overall very fun. It kind of nice comments here and, how kids and their parents kind of fall apart as a kid matures and starts growing and, changes their friend groups and their viewpoints on stuff. Because I think a lot of us as teenagers have gone through that kind of phase. And so I think that's just a nice way to end off the movie. Again, very fun. And I love this segment so much. It might be one of all, because as I mentioned, I've seen other segments from previous VHS movies. This might be like in the top 5 of the segments I've seen. So I love this one.
I think you convinced me, man. I think I'll just make this my favorite segment. I'll bump it to an 8 out of 10. Is it one of my top favorites? No, but it's a good segment, man. It is damn good. I just wish, this is one of the ones where I really wish they did give them more of a budget because I feel like we could have seen even crazier stuff, and I would be like, holy shit, this is just a lot of fun. It's a good one, and I think that this segment is like what VHS kind of should be a lot of the time, where it's like, just go for that fun and wacky stuff, man. Bring back the good old days of anthology. We like the creepy stuff, Coochie Coochie Coo. We like all that stuff, but throw in some fun stuff. And then instead they give us kids print, where it's just like, I just feel like FBI just about to come in any moment. But the last segment we got to talk about quite briefly, because I don't have too many thoughts on it, is Diet Phantasma.
Diet Phantasma, made with real ghosts. Made 100% with poltergeist extract. It's spooktacular and only 1 calorie.
It's scary how good it tastes.
Diet Phantasma, available now from the Octagon Company.
Wraparound segment. I will say this, one of the most unique wraparound segments. I feel like it had the most potential. It might be like my second or third favorite wraparound segment. I would say it's decent. This one to me started off really strong because, listen, you have soda taste testing. They would have got my ass. I'm sorry. They would have got me. They would have instantly killed me, because the moment you're like, oh, let's try this new Pepsi Cola flavor. Oh, shit. Let me get up, new Mountain Dew. I'm on my way. Let me try it. And they would have put some stupid name on the flavor that would have got me, and I would have been killed. I mean, it's Halloween themed soda. That's how you kill me. That's how they clear the population. And I love the idea of them getting possessed by like demons or ghosts or whatever it is. The tentacles coming out of the can is like, I don't know what it is about that. I was like the whole face hugger thing where the can sucked to his face. I was like, holy shit, that is cool. It's a very violent wraparound segment. But the main thing was, even though it had a strong start and a very strong finish, I love the way it ends. The middle sections are very repeating. It's almost like it's meant to be comical, but it's like they repeat so much with the same old stuff. I'm like, okay, can we like change it up or switch it up or get to somewhere? They do eventually get to that point where it's like things start to derive into something else, but it just takes a while to get there. So I'd probably give it like a 7.5. It's a pretty good one. I still think my favorite wraparound segment is from the either first or second movie. I think the second movie is one where it's like they're inside a college dorm and there's a guy hiding in the closet who might be more than he seems. Super creepy. That one's my favorite. This one's my second favorite. So what do you think about Diet Phantasm?
Yeah, I thought it was very fun, like as a wraparound. It doesn't really tie anything together. It's not like what I've seen from some of the previous movies where the wraparound actually ties into the specific VHS tapes that play. It's just kind of a fun little like story to kind of cut back to in between each short. And for what it was, I enjoyed it. I like the idea again of this like, soda taste testing group that's hiding a bit more of a sinister edge. I like that's kind of a commentary on how, big corporations don't care about you. They just care about making money and care about, getting a product out and they don't really care about, what repercussions that might have or what damage they leave in their wake. So I think that was a good commentary on that kind of idea. And I agree. Yeah, they would have gotten me. I would have been dead. But like, I feel like the one critique I would have, and it's a critique I saw like someone else give on one of their reviews that I agree with, is that I think it would have worked a little bit more is if each time they cut back to it, they were testing a different product. And maybe the different product had like a different effect on the person who consumed it. I think that would have been a really fun idea. Like maybe one product is like a cookie that turns people into monsters or something like that. Like, I don't know, just something crazy like that. I think that would have been a fun way to kind of change it up and keep the similar formula, but have it be less repetitive. And I feel like that would have worked a lot better. And then you could have had like, or maybe like they're testing a bunch of different products and Diet Phantasma was like the only one that's successful. So they ended up with that being the one that's being sold on Halloween. Like they're testing a bunch of products that they want to get out on Halloween. And yeah, again, Diet Phantasma is the only one that's successful. And that's why they end up putting that specific product out. I think that would have been a more interesting way to keep it engaging. I do think for what we did get, though, there are some fun kills. The first one with the guy who was like the black goo, like bleeding out of his eyes and mouth and stuff and like getting the tentacles and like the can stuck to his face was good. I like the one where in the second segment where the guy gets like sprayed in the face with the soda and his like face starts like bulging and his hands get like skinned off or something like that. I think that was really effective and well done. Most of the other ones were just kind of the generic, like, vomiting black bile, like smacking each other's heads up into like the glass or things like that. There was a kind of darkly comedic moment though, where a kid explodes after drinking it. That did get a laugh out of me, just because it's so like sudden. But overall, I think it was just a decent segment. It was fun for what it was, but like I'll probably put it in like the middle of the segments, probably, if we're including the wraparound. I would put it above Kid Print and Kid Print Fun Size and Super Sing and Farah, but below Home Haunt and Coochie Coo.
Okay, yeah. No, I think that, yeah, you're right. They should have had like multiple products. I think they should have went like an alien route, maybe like a They Live. They're all aliens in disguise, testing all like a sci-fi route. Go crazy with it. Instead of the Ghostbuster, the whole sucking the ghost through the tube thing. That was also like didn't explain. Also, why they're selling this soda for Halloween? That's never explained. Like the guy who's like leading it is just like, fuck it, just do it. Fuck it, just do it. I'm like, is that your motivation? And I said this before, not in a review, but in a chat, where I said that what they should have done, in my opinion, is take Diet Phantasma and made it one of the actual anthology segments, and make Kids Print a wraparound segment, because Kids Print had the VHS tapes. It had the tapes. So you could have had, Bruce or somebody loading in the tapes, cut to the anthology segment. And make Diet Phantasma an actual segment. Because I feel like instead of having that repetitiveness, you could have cut it down, truncated it, and maybe even gone crazier with it, depending on the budget. So, yeah, that's VHS Halloween. Overall, I would say that this movie didn't impress me too much, but I know Micah liked it, and I know there's a lot of you out there who really loved it. So if you've not seen this movie, go do it, especially because this video is dropping on Halloween. Perfect time to go watch it. Go check it out, and go watch some of the other VHS movies. There's a lot of other good ones out there. My personal favorites are like Beyond and 99. Definitely go check those out. 94, though. It's a segment involving something called Storm Drain. I know Mike has probably seen it. Go watch that. It's amazing. And that's all I got for this one. Micah, you have any closing thoughts before we send all these trick-or-treaters out to the night to Mr. Solomon?
Well, thank you for having me on. It's really fun talking about, again, it's fun branching out from Goosebumps and actually talking about some adult horror for once, especially leading into Halloween. And of course, to all the people watching, if you're a younger audience for some reason watching an adult horror movie discussion, please stay safe while you're out there. Make sure, have fun. Again, stay safe, stay close to your chaperones or whoever is going out with you if you're younger. And just hope you all have a very spooky Halloween.
Yes, and for all the kids out there trick-or-treating, remember the main rules, all right? Do not pick up any Halloween-themed soda cans. No, don't go with them, all right? If you see a giant candy bowl with mysterious candy that says take one piece, you take one piece. You don't know who's watching, all right? Make sure your Reese's cup don't got no razor blades in it, okay? No syringe needles, none of that, all right? And make sure there's no creepy man walking around taking you to a videotaping company with offering you a Nintendo 64. And it's gonna end bad. It's gonna end bad. And that's all I got for today. Happy Halloween, everybody. Thank you so much to Ultimate Goosebumps Man for coming on this video. His channel will be linked down below. Go check him out. Go subscribe to him, because I know you guys watch Goosebumps content on my channel. He makes Goosebumps content. And go check out Goose Junkies, which is a podcast that's playlisted on my channel and on Horror FFA's channel. And yeah, happy Halloween, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this festive month. Deuces. Happy Halloween, everybody. Okay. The mask is muffling my voice. Happy Halloween, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Horrorweentown Festival. There was quite a bit of content that got put out this month, so I am proud of myself for that. Not everything I wanted to review and put out got put out, but still a fair amount of content to you guys. It was a lot of fun to make. This was a very festive and just great Halloween, especially because for the past 4 years of my college, like, I didn't have any time for Halloween to celebrate, and now with me having like a new work and job, I'm able to have more time to kind of celebrate the festivities and stuff. So all of that was really good. Thank you for all of you guys who tuned in. It was a lot of fun putting out the content for you fans, as well as watching a lot of stuff alongside my friends. Always a good feeling, and just a good time. And yeah, I will be probably taking a break from making content just because I have been more consistent than I usually am. So I will take a little bit of a breather, but I don't think November will be void of content. I think I'll still be dropping reviews and videos and trying to put out stuff. And yeah, that's all I got for right now. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys enjoyed the previous stuff. And stay safe this Halloween. Check your Reese's cups for any razor blades. And just have a good time on Sam Hain's night. Goodbye.